There we go. Hey,
Hello.
good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm good. It's
Hey,
Friday. Hey, Joe.
how are you?
I hate the week after a 3-day weekend. So I'm glad that this week is ending because it feels like your punishment for the 3-day weekend is that they put like 7 days of work into 4 days. You know?
Mhm.
Yep,
So, Mike, are you moderating this?
I am.
You are? Okay. Do you want me to make you host? Oh, let me make you host then.
Please make me host.
That means you're gonna have to watch. Well, actually, yeah.
No, I'll watch. I'll watch for
So you'll have to
our
go
panelists
to
and escalate them.
exactly. There you go. So if I make you host, you're good. You know, you don't now you should see end. You don't have to do anything with the recording. It should be recording already. So because nothing makes better recordings than me talking about the fact it's recording. And all you have to do is end it at the end. You don't have to do anything for recording. It'll load it right up.
Okay.
Oh, and there Joey is in there. Okay, look at that rolling. You're rolling with it. But yes, I gave up host, so I lost all my power. Ready? How do you? All right, let me up here.
How are you, Joey?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
See, I put on makeup, I brushed my hair, I did all the things for you.
You didn't have to do it for me. So
I don't think anybody wants to see me on camera in my normal workout gear and like rolling out of bed, which is what I normally do. I've taken the total tact of I don't care anymore. We're all working at home, and if you need to see me in a blouse for some reason, we've got another problem to discuss.
Friday is my remote day, and I do a long gym in the morning, and then I come home and I basically wear my gym clothes for the rest of the day. And today I was like, oh, I have to put on a blouse.
Yeah, I came running home from the gym, got in the shower. I was like, okay, gotta get it done.
I mean, it would have been a statement. Just show up in a hoodie, Karen, and just bring the hood up over. And
For sure. I agree with Joey, though. I don't know that anyone wants to see that.
One of the first interviews we did for our DEI work, I was meant to be in the background as the communications expert and really not be on camera. I was trying to promote my colleagues and have them be the speakers. And the interviewer started asking corporate questions that nobody felt comfortable answering. And so I was in workout clothes, but I happened to have been wearing a neon yellow sports bra and a white t-shirt over it.
Oh.
And so they have me on camera, like answering like the most profound, like, where does Avixa stand as, we're talking about this, that. And I was just like, oh God, this is not the thing that was supposed to happen.
I love those stories. Years ago, when I was still a tech, very, very early on, this is like 20 years ago or something, I showed up for work one day and didn't know there was a major event, like with people from the UN. And they sent me out to fix someone's microphone in the middle of it. And I had a crop top that said girls boxing, Bronx, New York, and some low slung early 2000s jeans on.
That is fantastic.
And I'm not like easily embarrassed, but I was like purple. So now I'm very careful to always make sure. I always say to my managers, make sure everyone knows if they're covering an event that day. Like everyone needs to know.
I occasionally have these conversations with my boyfriend if I happen to ask him a piece of advice on something I'm wearing, and he's like, is that how you want people? Because I am the least conservative human. And he's like, is that really how you want people to see you? And sometimes I'm like, okay, I think you're right. And then sometimes I'm like, fuck yeah, I am too. And it's okay.
That's who I am. I love it. Hey, Natalie. Good morning.
Good morning. How's everybody?
How about you?
Good. Good.
Having a good day?
Mm-hmm.
Natalie, I very much like your pendant.
Thank
Thinking
you.
the same thing.
Scrabble tile. Very, very
Oh.
little scrabble tile.
Oh,
So
that's
nice.
cool. Did someone make that for you?
I think they found it at a, crafty shop.
Yeah.
But they saw it and were like, hey, that's an N.
I know who to give that to.
Mhm.
The sun is changing location here. I have to
Mhm.
adjust.
Oh yeah.
It's so pretty out here. Well, cold, but really pretty.
The weather's weird here. It's sunny and then it's sleeting and then sunny. I don't know.
We're
Mhm.
having a full-blown like springtime going on. Atlanta, we
Nice.
we like to change in Atlanta, so we will have all 4 seasons in any given day. Right now we're really only having one. We're only having spring, but we'll have a freeze again. But right now it's like going to be 70-ish, beautiful out. Everything is blooming, and then I'm like, it'll drop down into the 40s probably next week.
Oh my.
Oh, we have another Atlanta in the house.
Hey, Kevin. Hey.
Oh, there's the participant counter going up. Wow.
Oh yeah. It's gonna be a great crowd. We'll give folks just another minute or two, and then we'll dive in. So
Jeff from my neck of the woods. Hey, Jeff.
-5 start. Oof. That's rough.
Yeah. I'm gonna pass on that.
Jeez.
it was single digits here. I'm not sure. It was 5, I think, when I woke up. +5 though. So
No, y'all can just keep that. I will keep my 4 seasons in a day.
It's like Monty Python over ice capades, huh? Ooh.
So I'm just going to say before we get started that my kitten has realized that I can do nothing and I'm stuck to this computer and has decided to just tear the house apart.
Oh boy. Oh
It's
boy.
like she's not going to do anything. So
By
all
the
around-
time we're ending this, my cats will be circling me because it will be lunchtime. And I'm very lucky today because the construction here, y'all can see the construction going on in my house is actually not happening today, but that is the construction wall.
Oh, yeah.
boy.
See that with all of my things stacked up like Tetris, but there's nobody working today. So I actually don't have to be in a bedroom. I can be in my kitchen and it's quiet.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
If I would get home, I'd have birds landing on my
Chris,
head.
they're not mean. They're a little feisty. And one of them is a bad word that I should no longer be saying on camera. To 49 people.
So Karen, yeah, speaking of cats, if I suddenly have a rapid appearance of pain on my face, it's because I have a kitten who's decided my leg is a scratching post. And all of a sudden I feel this sharp claws in my leg. I'm like, what? We're trying to break that, but
yeah. I know what you mean. I feel your pain, my friend. Cuddly but deadly.
Yes.
Now, did you adopt kittens or did you just have kittens by accident or?
Did you have kittens by accident? Is it like exploding kittens?
Wow.
They just
Fantastic.
they just spontaneously emerged, right? So we these two we bought actually. So yeah. All right. Well, it's time. We need to get started. So thank you everyone for joining us on day 3 of HETMA 2023. It's been a great conference so far, but we've got more amazing stuff coming up today. So please stay with us all day. But let's get started with this great panel. We're here to talk about diversity and hiring practices, or where are all the women and minorities? And so we've got a great panel for you today. For those of you who don't know, I'm Mike Peterson. I work at Iowa State University, and I look forward to being your moderator for this session today. But let's go around and meet our panelists. So Karen, let's start with you.
Thanks, Mike. So Karen Ethier, I use pronouns she, her, hers. I'm the Director of Support Services for IT at Roger Williams University. I oversee help desk, desktop support, and traditional audiovisual services. I also have a part-time job at the university as a search advocacy coordinator. So I have developed this program and in conjunction with our Chief Diversity Officer and Human Resources. And I train and support faculty and staff who serve as equity process advisors to search committees. So every search committee at the university, faculty, staff, administration has a search advocate that has been trained through my program. And I'm really thrilled to be asked to be on this panel. This is obviously something that's very near and dear to my heart, especially because I myself came up as a woman, in the AV industry. So, and this is a great group of panelists, and I'm really thrilled to hear what everyone has to say. So thank you, Mike.
Yes. All right, Natalie, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Natalie Gillespie. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Senior AV Specialist at Northwestern University, on the membership board for the Northwestern Women's Association, DEI committees, PTA treasurer. I don't know. I fell into this field backwards, as most people do, and I just feel very strongly about trying to promote diversity in all sorts of things. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, awesome. We're glad to have you. And last but not least, Joey, why don't you introduce yourself?
Good morning, everybody. I am Joey Lloyd. I am the Senior Director of Communications at AVIXA. So I am here to represent our organization, and at a personal level, absolutely a passion of mine and a passion of AVIXA. I've been helping to lead our efforts in this area for several years. And I think most notably is the very exciting, stomping, screaming, attended event that I did with Mr. Joe Way, getting to announce the PRISM Scholars with HETMA and the announcement of that program. So I know that you will be talking to the scholars and some of their challenges just after this panel, but proud to be here. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having AVIXA. And this is an absolute conversation that we have to have as an industry. It is ongoing, it is necessary, and thank you for hosting it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, as Joey says, he says this all the time, that was his favorite moment in his whole AV career, was that day where they announced it from the stage at Infocom. So great stuff, great stuff.
Definitely one of my favorites. And I will say probably even more favorite was the fact that I got to steal the mic from Dave Labuscus.
This is recorded, so just be careful what you say. So
He knows.
All right. Well, let's tee this up with again, we kind of Natalie, you kind of alluded to it, that you kind of fell into it. But obviously you three found your way into AV in one way or another. Well, how did that happen for each of you briefly? So Joey, we'll start with you. How did you find yourself at AVIXA?
Wow. So I actually found my way previous to AVIXA. So I have a very strange and varied career. I actually started as a makeup artist way back when. And I spent about 20 years doing that. I was very lucky to be at home with my kids and had a family that was able to support that. And it was something I loved. And when I did eventually go back to work, I was at a small agency, and one of my former clients called me and she said, I'm working for this company and we need help. And so she started to tell me about it. And I jokingly said, you should just hire me. And lo and behold, about 2 weeks later, there was a director of marketing position at an LED company, and it had my name on it. So I spent about 4 years running marketing and business development at Nanolumens, and I was lucky enough to meet Barbara actually at an event. And she called me a few weeks later and she said, there's this thing over here you should look at. And I found my way to Avixa, and I think it's sort of amazing how many of us come from so many varied backgrounds. I'm one of the few, I think, that didn't come out of the sort of audio, DJ, something in the background that's musical. In fact, nobody ever wants to hear me play music, and definitely not sing. But it's amazing to be here. But as a woman, it's definitely a hard road. The things that have happened personally, the things that you hear about, this is an ongoing path.
Yeah, for sure. Natalie.
I got bored sitting in church one day as a kid. Saw somebody hanging off a balcony with a camera and went, that looks like more fun. So I joined the AV team and yeah, did that through grade school and high school. And then when I started in college, the first job that I ran into was doing AV for the student union. So it was just, I did that while I was getting an anthropology and international studies degree.
Yeah.
And managed to work there for another 4 or 5 years while getting a education master's. And then quit for a little while, worked with kids and animals and editing Empire carpeting commercials for a little while and rock stars, but then decided that I wanted to have a family and a stable paycheck, benefits, health insurance. Came back to Northwestern to do AV. It's sort of been a constant, a steady thing that I could always fall back on.
Yeah. And how about you, Karen?
Well, first of all, I just want to say, I think it's really interesting, Natalie. I've never heard anyone's story go back that far.
Right.
We talk a lot, Troy Powers said to me that, this is a niche career that people fall into, right? And I think that's true with so many. And I have never heard a story like yours where someone had that intentionality that it was something going back to when they were a kid. So I think that's really interesting. So I've told this story before, but I was a sociology student at the University of Rhode Island, and I needed a student job. And there was a sign that said classroom media assistance is hiring. I didn't know what that was. So I showed up at the door and I said, I'm, here to ask about the job. And the guy inside said, okay, let's go down to the office and fill out the paperwork. And I was like, okay. So we went downstairs and we filled out the paperwork and, and I remember calling my parents and they were like, that sounds like it might involve technology. And this is 1997. And I was like, you think? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, I don't know. We didn't even have a TV growing up. I had hippie parents, right? I didn't have a computer. I had a word processor that I had a typewriter at the beginning of school and then a word processor. So my first day on the job, they told me, just close up the office at 5 or whatever and turn off the computer. I didn't actually know how to turn off the computer. So I just held the button until the computer, shut down. So I was told really early on that I had been hired because that week or that day, the IT department had been told that for their classroom media assistants, which was audiovisual, that they needed to hire a girl. And so I just happened to show up. And I was reminded of that every single day that I worked in that department, for several years. I was hazed, I was sexually harassed, I was made to carry, they would say, well, if you want to keep up with the big boys, you need to, show us what you have. So they would load me up with, the big S video cameras and the huge tripods and make me, carry it to our video shoots off site. They would, just a lot of different, really negative kind of, behavior. And so, the thing is, I think it was twofold for me why I continued. So first of all, I really loved the work. But I think also the challenge of being told that I couldn't do it or shouldn't be there was a significant sort of carrot for me in continuing on. So, I'm a person who, when given a challenge, really rises up to that. And so I really think that I had, something to prove. And so later on, I would go on and get a master's in teaching and go teach for a little while. But I was really drawn back to this field because I really loved it. And I do like to be challenged. So.
Yeah. That's great. So yes, I also, Natalie, I do want to go back to your story a little bit too. One of the things that we talk about a lot in some of the STEM activities I am involved with is, youth need to see people that are like them to believe that they can do something. So I'm just kind of curious, did you see other girls or women, working at tech at your church, or did you just decide, looks like fun?
No, there weren't any others. I was the only
Yeah.
one. And, I was only allowed to hang out there when there were other sort of chaperones around.
Mm-hmm.
The guys could come and go as they wanted. They were, and that was a big push for me, to be a representative so that other girls, other people could see somebody else in that position and say, hey, I can do that too.
Yeah. No, that's great. I was just curious. So, sounds like, both you, Natalie, and Karen, you almost did it out of spite, right? To prove to them that you could get it done, almost to some extent. We're glad you did, but that's not the preferable way to have to go about it. So
It's a
No,
great
and
deal.
it was a lot of stress, it was a lot of stress always having to prove, like for instance, carrying all that equipment, I blew out my back. Now we all blew out our backs in AV, right? But, but I definitely, was physically doing things that, were above what I should have been doing and really wouldn't have been expected of a man either. I mean, it was just really, hazing at that point.
yeah. Yep. So, so let's get to the question at hand. So where are all the women and minorities? Let's just dive right into that question. So, Joey, where are they?
They're not here, although some of them are. As we look at some of the research that Avixa performs, we are definitely under national standards. We're under global standards. But I think one of the more important issues with that, beyond the simple part of the number, is that women and minorities are not in leadership positions. And so, Mike, you talked a little bit about, if I see it, I can be it. And we're not there. The women are not there. The minorities are not there. And if you break that down as to what that means, it's pay, certainly, and we're seeing those gaps, but it is also access. So we're really excited. InfoComm is coming, right? We just came out of ISE and now we're heading on to Orlando. Couldn't be more excited. I bet you that there are a number of people in our audience and even amongst us as panelists that didn't have access to shows because we were not in leadership positions, because we were not in a sales position that was seen as getting out there and doing something. So there is not an elevation happening. So we're keeping people from access to education in both the literal format of that, of something like a CTS, but we're also keeping them from access to education of what it means to go to a show and see something like that. And it's why something like the PRISM Scholarship is so important, because it wasn't just the education, it wasn't just money, but it was actually access to the show to see what the industry is about. And that's really where I think there is massive room for improvement, and we can move beyond, we have to move beyond the idea that it is a numbers game. It's not. There has to be certainly specific ideas that companies want to do and get at, and ways to create comfort zones for women and minorities. But we also have to look at all of those many aspects and what we're keeping people from. And that's what the data is showing us, is that there is an absolute glass ceiling across our industry.
Yeah, Natalie, Karen, either of you want to dive in? Where are they? So
it's a bad problem. It's an emergency. I mean, frankly, we're not making any strides. You know, I heard we were 15% female. Then I heard that more recently after COVID, we're 9% female. I haven't heard any numbers about racially minoritized people, but we know they're not here. We don't see them, right? And we're actually not talking about them. I think we're doing a lot of talking right now about women, and we're not doing enough talking about, you know, race, and also the intersectionality of race, you know, as well. So I think about this a lot. I spent a lot of time thinking about this. And I think, to me, I boiled it down in my head to sort of 4 main issues. And first of all, there's pipeline, right? There is no formal pipeline into the audiovisual industry. You know, as we said, it's something you fall into as a sort of niche kind of thing. There's no formal, you know, training or pathways that with which people get into the audiovisual industry. And we're starting to see some thinking and work around this. George Chaco at Pace has just developed a program, and I think they have their inaugural class going now. I know a lot of other schools are talking about it. Christopher Hope in Boston with the Loop Lab is doing some really exciting work there. So I think things are happening. But I think that for me, we need to look at how are people getting into this industry informally and see if we can have some impact there, right? And then we have hiring practices. So, and I can talk, you know, I literally give a 12-hour training on hiring practices. So, you know, I'm not going to get too far into that, but I think hiring practices and unconscious bias are absolutely a problem. Then there's the mentoring issue, right? So they're in, you have them, but then who mentors them? There's no one that looks like them, right? They're the token in their department. I didn't work with another woman until I finally, you know, was in a position to hire a woman, right? I didn't work with, you know, someone in my department who was a different race than me until, again, I was in a position to hire them, right? And then finally, I really think we need to start talking about the toxic male environment of the audiovisual industry. It's a major problem. I am, you know, doing, I'm going to be on a Women in Tech panel that Britt is organizing, and there's a group of us talking by email, and the stories coming out of that email chain about the things that we've all experienced in this industry. And that just hasn't gotten any better. I've been doing this for 26 years, and that toxic male environment has just gotten worse and worse. And you're just not going to welcome and keep women and racially minoritized people in that kind of environment.
I think that's such an important place to stop on. And Natalie, I don't want to step over you, but if there does not start to be immediately consequences for actions, but in addition to that, one of the things I heard recently from the folks at Wave It was about the ability to get in, how do we get other men to stand up for it? And I think that's the thing. I know for myself, I would stand up to anybody and just say out that that's not acceptable. We don't talk like that. We don't do those things, remove people from situations. But how do we get our allies to do the same thing in an environment like this?
Agreed. You talked about retention as well as being part of the mentorship helps with retention. having flexibility so that you can work around families, emergencies, situations where you're a lot less stable than a cis white male in this industry. You might have a lot more on your plate, more you're juggling. Having that pipeline be a lot more diverse. I mentioned that I got into it because of a church, and a lot of people seem to get into sound and AV, having been exposed to that sort of thing. That means that there's not a whole lot of religious minorities coming into this. People who can afford the tech toys to play with, to be the person that everybody comes to and says, how do I put my TV together? And then they can say that in a job interview, you know, I'm the one that everybody asks about how to fix your iPad or, you know, whatever. There's a lot of odd hours in AV for event support, for music, for things like that. So being able to work out flexibility in this industry is really important. We talked about having to do AV in person because it's a lot of physical working with gear, but there's also a lot that can be done remotely. So I start my day out at 7:30 in the morning or earlier. Whenever I wake up, I go through tickets, I turn on my radio, I make sure that everything is, I'm sending out my minions in the mornings to go fix things while I'm getting my kid ready for school, while I'm making breakfast. And then once he's finally out the door, I get myself ready and come in to physically fix things in person. So having a little bit of flexibility seems to help. And it really takes intentionality. I agree. I didn't work with any other women in this field really until I started to hire other women. And now it's become a word of mouth thing that it's a safe place to work. It's not a toxic environment. You know, the women are like, hey, we're not going to get harassed here.
Yeah.
I really like what I like that you brought class into it and access to technology. I think that's really important, not just personal access, but maybe where they went to school or what church they went to, right? Like the other environments they're in and what kind of technology they've been exposed to. I also think that you highlighted something that, you know, sort of goes back to what, you know, Joey and I were talking about, that toxic male environment, in that the fact that this job is seen to be a trial by ordeal, right? There's sort of a culture of audiovisual as having long hours, having to do very hard work, always being connected, always, you know, having to, you know, be, you know, never being able to take time to do professional development or to take lunch. You know, there was a culture in my department with my prior director where, you know, we're too busy to take lunch, right? Like it's an ordeal, right? Well, that doesn't make this field attractive to a lot of people, right? Not just women and racially minoritized people. So I think that's another part of this, is thinking about that culture, because the fact of the matter is, I know I've changed that culture at my work, and we get all of our work done and everybody takes a lunch break and everybody works, you know, fair, regular hours, and nobody is overburdened, and we get great reviews and all our work gets done.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've been here in this industry 20 plus years. And yes, I mean, there's a certain badge of honor of, you know, all the war stories of, you know, how hard I worked at this or that, you know, and yeah, and that can be, you know, a challenge for people to hear sometimes, like, well, that's not me, right? So yeah.
Wondering.
Thank Michael, who just put something in the chat. That's really fantastic. Talking about the Compton High School. Anytime that anybody in the industry comes across these things, it's somewhat hard to keep track on all of them. We have our foundation and we continue to do work there, and we're partnered with folks like the Loop Lab. You already talked about Chris Hope, but thank you for sharing that. That's really fantastic.
Mhm. That makes me wonder what the AV teams, if there is even an AV team in high school these days anymore, since you're not carting in projectors anymore, or overhead projectors, or whatever.
Does anyone's kid actually know what that is anymore? I know mine don't.
Yeah.
No.
So is
Well,
that line going away?
I think the aspects of high school today that are most still active in AV would be like theater, right? And so getting active in theater tech, depending on the size of the high school, some of them run a little TV station, blurbs that they put together. But yeah, as far as what we would traditionally consider installed pro AV, yeah, I wonder if there's less of that even at a high school level going on. So again, back to the pipeline issue.
Esports and gaming clubs, that's a good point.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I think there's something broader there as well, in the fact that I think we could probably consider most teenagers content creators in and of themselves. And how do we tie that back to what we do? Because I think that there's something there. It's such an easy link to think through, how that happens. And while it's just social media for them, it truly does live in our world.
Yep.
Natalie, I'm wondering, is there anything, I always like to talk about hiring. Is there anything you're doing around hiring that's interesting in this area?
Very much so. We're one of the few departments on campus that doesn't require work study. So I'm lucky enough to be able to hire a lot of international students. So that means we get a lot of sub-Saharan African students this last couple of years, which is really cool. And I've intentionally reached out to majors that aren't necessarily computer engineering or computer science to try to broaden the field and put on there, this is a woman-led department, because oftentimes people look at it and go, nah, that's just not going to be comfortable. So getting a wide mix of people. It used to be that we weren't able to hire too many people from the same fraternity, because when they'd have an event, then we'd have half the team busy and couldn't take that shift. That's shifted a lot. We had a lot of fraternities stop on campus. So now it's, we can't have too many people from the African Students Organization at the same time because of events, which is, a better problem to have, I think.
That's a great problem to have at this point. Yeah.
I like the way that you've, really done some intentional things. Erin put in the chat, intentionality is important. I think that keeps coming up over and over again, right? Like if we're going to change this, we need to be intentional and proactive, not reactive about changing it. So I agree with you. International students are a great resource to tap into and really bring a different viewpoint and experience to the student worker group. So that's really great. We have done in our student group, we have been very, very intentional about diversifying our student group, and we reevaluate the demographics of our student group, yearly or even on a biannual basis, and actively seek out groups that we feel are not represented among our student group. And we were really excited. A couple of weeks ago, we had an ETC local event at Roger Williams that we hosted, which was amazing. And the highlight of the day was we had a panel of 6 of our student workers, hugely diverse group in terms of their, background, race, gender identity, sexuality, what year they were, what major they were. And they were asked, what did they like about working in our department in IT? And there was, across the 6, this sort of message that they felt included, they felt welcome, that it was a place where they felt they could make a mistake, and that they wouldn't, have to lose face or whatever, that they would be supported in that there were people that they could go to and talk to if they needed help. And it was really gratifying to kind of see to me, it was very much like the fruit of our efforts over the years. So I cried a little.
Well, that sounds great. Yeah. So what are some ways that we can make sure that our students are feeling that way, right? That they're feeling supported, that they're feeling included, that they're feeling seen. What are some small ways that we can be doing that for those students?
I have my students split up into teams with team leaders, student team leaders. And every week I have the team leaders meet with each student for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and just make sure that they're okay. Start. Ask them what they've run into in the past week, what weird questions they've been asked, what situations they've been put in. Just make sure that they have somebody to touch base with and ask their questions, and that they're being seen and somebody cares about them,
Yeah.
We've done really, really similar. So our last 2 staff members that we've had kind of overseeing our student group, we've very intentionally chosen people who were student workers themselves. Either our current person who's working with them, Stephanie Brooks, shout out for Stephanie Brooks, she's awesome, is a former student worker of ours, was in our department, left, and then ended up coming back and working for us. And then prior to that, we had someone who had been a student worker at another institution. And so I think having someone who understood what the perspective of the student worker is, and Stephanie does great stuff. Like, she meets with the students on a monthly basis, does it on a Sunday, so that they're all available, and checks in with them, sees how they're doing, where are there gaps in, the information. They use, a site in our LMS to have all the content that they need. They have built a lot of scaffolding into our training so that students aren't kind of thrown out there, that they're really, sort of developed over time and have sort of different levels of responsibility. We very intentionally pair students together on projects and try to create some community that way as well. And then, Natalie, to your point, being really flexible and understanding and making sure that we talk about work-life balance. Well, that may seem ridiculous when we're talking about someone who works 8 or 12 hours a week, right? But they are balancing school and life and this job and maybe an internship. And so we try to, as much as possible, work with them to make sure that they're supported in all of those things.
Yeah.
It always felt like sort of a missed opportunity for me, that we've got all of these brilliant students working so hard and learning so much that they're not going to use so much. I mean, the soft skills they'll use for sure. And tell them, make sure that you emphasize these soft skills in job interviews, and I will be happy to promote you if you remember to come and on time and communicate well. But the technological skills, we're just sort of teaching them, and then that pipeline ends. they don't go into the AV industry because this is not seen as a way into the industry. And we work so hard on all of these, Canvas courses, and teaching the students and quizzing them and making sure that I'd like to propose that we collaborate on that and we work more to make this an actual pipeline into the AV industry.
I think that's really interesting because in trying to do intentionality around my staff hiring, I have started to I'll just like call another school. So, I had, I needed I had to fill a temporary position as a classroom support specialist. And they wanted me to go to a temp agency and I didn't want to. So I called the University of Rhode Island help desk and I was like, can I talk to your supervisor, please? Which really freaked out the student who answered. But I ended up, hooked up with Terry Wild at URI, who sent me some applicants, some recent graduates of theirs who had worked in their department. And one of them, ended up coming to work with us. And, he worked for a year. He was fantastic. And then he got, a job offer somewhere else making way more money and he left. But it was kind of interesting that it actually worked. And then since then we have been using those sort of pipelines as well. So I'm wondering if there's something there, Natalie, about maybe working together, some sort of communication when we all have an opening, trying to get at those student workers who are graduating, who may, even just if they just are going to try it out for a year or two and maybe they'll stay and maybe they won't. But, that's how I got into it. I didn't get a job out of college. So, just kept on doing it.
Yeah, same.
So I'm curious, have you seen any ways that you've been successful to convince these student workers that pro AV is a viable career path for them, and we'll say convert them to the pro AV way? So
I don't try. We're not trying to do that.
Okay.
To tell you the truth. No, I mean, our students are generally very focused. It's a small school. People come they want to do something very specific. And so we're not going to try to convince them not to be like a construction project manager and go into AV instead. Like they know, or an architect, they know what they want.
Yeah. That's fair. Yeah. That's fair.
I do tell them that you get to travel sometimes.
Yeah. So we have a couple questions in the chat. Britt asked this: what do we need to do to make the AV industry a brave space? That is, we can stand up for ourselves, others, call out bad behavior when we see it.
I'm curious what Joey has to say about this. I feel like this is a perfect question for Joey.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for giving me the hard one. So at a corporate level, Avixa has a zero tolerance policy. We carry that across our shows, and we try to make safe spaces there and more inclusive spaces. It's been something we've been really intentionally working on. And so it's, as specific as the language that you sign when you plan on attending a show, to the intentionality of creating gender neutral bathrooms, to the intentionality of creating, we're going to be announcing some interesting things at InfoComm soon to come, but some areas of quiet for those who need it. Not everyone, I'm a talker, I can deal with loud, but not everybody is like me. So it's the creation of that inclusivity across everything that we do. And I am incredibly proud to work at a company that has so many females, so many mothers, and so many female leaders. It's really quite amazing. But that said, as a female, not representing Avixa at the moment, I would tell you that we need to do a better job of calling out the bad behavior, and I sort of hate to use the word punishment, but there has to be repercussions. As recently as just in the past couple of months, I continue to hear about bad behavior that is trying to be brushed under the rug and just, put aside, we trained. It was just a mistake. We cannot take this anymore. And I know that of the female leaders that I have the opportunity to call my friends in this industry, they're not standing for it anymore. And we can't, but there also has to be the male allies who stand up for us and say, this is not okay. It is a group effort. And I think the biggest challenge that we have is, of the panelists sitting here and probably the number of people that are listening today, we're talking to those who have already drank the Kool-Aid, so to speak. How do we deal with the people who haven't drank the Kool-Aid? That's what flavor do we need? How loudly do we have to scream? And I am not one of the women who's going to tell you that you should have a buddy system and that, somebody should always know where you are and, use your voice. Yes, you should, but that's not fixing it.
Yeah, I mean, Karen can speak to this, but she had several less than stellar experiences at ISE just in the last month. So I don't know if you want to share any of those or not, but
sure. So, first of all, I've spoken about this before, and every woman knows, when you go to trade shows and walk up to a booth, no one is coming to talk to you. They are never coming to talk to you. Even after you ask them to talk to you, they're going to answer your question and then they're going to blow you off. So there was that for sure. And, being asked if I was, someone's partner, like when I walked up to a booth with a man. So, but my story is this, and I've told this a lot over the last couple of weeks. So I know a few of you have heard this, but so I was invited to a vendor dinner as a customer at ISE. So I was contacted by my local rep. He had put forth my name to go to this vendor dinner. And so I showed up at the dinner. Mike was there. Mike's wife, Jen, was there, and others. And the executives from the manufacturer came in and sort of, introduced all around, shook everybody's hand and sat down. And then one of the executives got up a couple of minutes later and he thanked all the customers for being there. And then he turned to me and Mike's wife, Jen, and he said, I want to thank the wives for being here today. And so there was a universal gasp in the restaurant, in the room, and someone leapt up and, and explained who I was. And the executive just kind of said, oh, well, I didn't really realize, I didn't hear whatever, and sat down and never came over to apologize. And so, I was already sort of steaming over this. And then the other executive comes over and he crouches down between me and Jen Peterson's seats. And he says, I just wanted to come over and say hi to the ladies. To which I turned and, mouthed an expletive to everybody at the table and then turned back politely. And he said, hey, just wanted to tell you that my wife can tell you what the best shopping spots are here in Barcelona if you want me to put you in contact with her.
Yep.
So I'm just going to say, I've been in this field 26 years. I consider myself to, at this point, be at the top of my career so far, right? And to have something like that happen, especially at a place where I had gotten, in a space where I'd gotten hand invited. There was a very small number of us at the dinner. It would have been a very low lift to have reviewed that list ahead of time and made sure. And to the credit, I'm going to call out Epiphan. We were at Epiphan dinner the night before. The representatives there knew who I was, had researched Roger Williams, talked about my work with ETC, were very polite and welcoming and inclusive. So it was really disappointing. And I wish that it weren't indicative of the hundreds of experiences that I could recount from my career and that all the women in this space right now could also recount.
Are you going to call out the vendor?
I'm not, because I'm a pro, Natalie. They know who they are. And anyone who's there knows who they are.
Yeah. So.
Oh, I love it. Donna said, can't stop laugh screaming. What is wrong with folks? It's freaking 2023. Love it.
Yeah, exactly. So
I wish I could say that it was, but I don't think it's getting better. I almost think it's getting worse, to tell you the truth. I think I've had worse experiences in the last couple of years. in some ways.
So over drinks with Karen sometime, she'll tell you the rest of the story after that, which was
My
spectacular. Oh, anyway.
My revenge.
Yeah. So not for now, but over drinks sometime, if you catch her, she'll tell you the rest of the story. So a couple of questions in the Q&A we'll try and get to. How are you addressing socioeconomic biases at your institutions, and what strategies are you employing to create a more equitable and inclusive work environment for students who come from varying economic backgrounds? Who wants to dive into that?
Agreed. We do have some work study students. And they are, by and large, very hard workers. I don't have the power to change who is admitted in what ways and with what levels of financial aid. But I do try to feed my students pretty frequently.
Yeah. Karen, I don't know. Have you tried to reach out specifically, in socioeconomic ways?
Specifically, no, not this hasn't come up with our student staff really that I can think of. I'm probably going to think of something in like 2 hours, but but no, not specifically. But I do have to say it's certainly in general something that I'm aware of in terms of equitable hiring in general, realizing that, when you're hiring, for those of you who are managers hiring staff, not student positions, being mindful that people have different access to technology, different access to stable Wi-Fi or cellular connections. Our chief diversity officer, a VP at the university, she was from the Bronx, from an area with very low saturation. When she interviewed for this job, she had to go get a hotel room to make sure that she had, good Wi-Fi and cellular for her interview to be a VP. So just realizing that also in terms of standards of clothing and how someone presents themselves at an interview, their availability. Not everyone is in a job where they can just readily take off half a day to come to a campus visit with you. So socioeconomic, I've thought about a lot in terms of staff hiring.
Yeah. Somebody in the Q&A put a statement, and they're asking for you all to comment on said statement. So here's the statement. Some may argue that being a woman allows some doors to be open to them that aren't open to men, such as having a leg up on bids because they are woman-owned business, just to subcontract the business to someone else. Curious on any comments on that.
On whether or not I have advantages as a woman? Is that the question, basically?
It seems to be,
affirmative action work, basically. Well, how often are you going to put your bid for somebody just based on whether they're a woman-owned business?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have an answer on this one.
Okay.
Which is not my area of expertise. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, let's talk about let's kind of end on a positive note. I know as we've talked, things aren't necessarily all positive right now. And as Karen has alluded, maybe we are headed backwards, but let's try and come up with a few things to end on a positive note. So I'm going to go around to all of you. Try and tell us at least a success story that you've seen recently that maybe we can build on. So Joey, we'll start with you.
A success story. I think one of the most successful things is how tightly supportive and amazing the women of this industry are. I've been in it for about 8 years now, and I am amazed at the number of times that I can shoot a text message, pick up a phone, and actually talk to somebody who really there is a bond, even if it's just the few times that we've seen each other on a trade show floor. We are amazingly supportive of one another, and you're seeing that in areas across all of the councils, but particularly if you look at the Diversity Council and the Women's Council of AVIXA, if you look at HETMA and what they're doing, if you look at the newly announced Wave IT, these are women coming together with real views, real support, and real initiatives. And I think that that is amazing. And I do think there are a lot of internal stories being told. As a head of communications, I can't tell them. But how do we continue that path? I think that we know what's going on. It's finding the ways to make sure that that information is known. I was semi-joking with somebody, but I'm kind of not. We need our own Me Too movement. There has to become a stark line in the ground, I guess, of where these things stop. But I am keep that positive momentum. I am amazed at the women in this industry. The opening, offering opportunity to be a part of it.
Yeah. Natalie, how about you? What are you seeing that we can go out on a positive note here?
I've just been really pleasantly surprised. I don't hire for technical ability in students, especially, or experience, because it's really not a good indicator of how successful a student's going to be in this field. I hire for a good work ethic, a good ability to work with other people, the ability to translate geek to human, or just understand when somebody says, hey, my projector's not working, that it might mean anything, and that you have to actually dig in to find out what's wrong. I'm really, really pleased with how well my students who have come from zero background have done incredibly well and just become so successful at coaching people and training each other and making sure that things run smoothly.
Yeah. How about you, Karen?
So I agree. Yeah, something positive. You want me?
Yeah. If you can.
You're like, Karen's hyped up. She's not gonna be able to do something positive. I can. Just what Joey said. I mean, this industry is filled with some rock star, badass women, and you know who you are. You see me looking at you, and you know who you are, and and that's a success right there. But I also, there's so much good work and momentum happening right now with this. So, we have the work being done within AVIXA with the Diversity Council and the Women's Council. We have, the emergence of Wave It. In ETC, we have the Idea Committee and the work that we're doing there. We have the PRISM Scholarship with HETMA. And so I think building on this momentum, I am going to just say, and this isn't a negative, but I do think we need to be careful to make sure that we're not centering this just around gender. And we've done a lot of talk about gender here. And, I have a sociology background, and there's a lot of history about social movements in the United States and how social movements for women's rights have sort of distanced themselves from social movements for racial equality in order to promote, themselves, because women's rights is more palatable to the, American public than racial equality is. So I think we need to be really, really careful here and make sure that we're starting to include those voices of racially minoritized people in this industry, and make sure that we're creating opportunities for them, to talk, to speak and have a voice and move forward their, what's going on with them as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll just kind of go around and get some closing thoughts. So Karen, do you have any closing thoughts for us?
I think that was my closing thoughts, but
Sure.
for the most part, Mike, but I just, I'm really grateful that these conversations are happening, and I'm reading the comments in the chat, and I'm so very pleased to hear them. Something I had wanted to mention that maybe I'll just throw in here, which is kind of awkwardly at the end and not necessarily, but I think we should be looking at social events at trade shows and at conferences that are not centered around alcohol, because I think that alcohol is serving to promote in some ways that toxic male environment, and having some social situations where we're engaging in conversation when we're not like fueled by alcohol, I think is something that we've been talking about with the idea committee with ETC. So just something I want to throw out there. A weird end note, but
Yeah. Joey, any other final thoughts?
I want to echo everything that Karen just said. In fact, in one of our follow-up meetings internally, we talked quite a bit about not only making mocktails available, but the intentional discussion about them. I love to drink a glass of wine as much as the next person, but there is something here that we need to make available, that safety piece of it, and how people respond. In closing thoughts, I've been reading the comments all the way through, and goodness, thank you for the kind words. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the honest and real questions. And I guess as we top out the hour, I will say you can find me. You can always get to Avixa either through the exchange or on the website, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, all of the socials, and you can find me. I am at Joe Lloyd, or you can reach out to me directly, jlloyd, JLLOYD at avixa.org to discuss this more. I'm open to it. Really excited to hear from all of you. And thank you, Mike, and thank you, HETMA.
Yeah. And Natalie, I ended with you on purpose because what I'd like you to do is try and tee us up into the Prism session coming up. So tell us why everyone should come listen to the Prism Scholarship discussion here in half an hour.
The Prism Scholarship is one way that HETMA is trying to reach out and promote diversity. Women, when I applied, I was like, I don't bring diversity to this. And then somebody was like, but you're female. Oh, yeah, I guess so. In this context, that really is a minority. So come talk to us and find out how the first class is going and how we can broaden this for another generation, another year of scholarship recipients to get better CTS training, mentorship, exposure to Infocom and the industry in general. Finding out about HETMA and Infocom has been career changing for me. So come on in and check out what's going on with that.
All right, that sounds great. Joe, you already kind of told them how to contact you. Karen, how would people reach out to you if they wanted to talk to you more?
I put my email in the chat, but I'm also on LinkedIn. So please reach out to me. I'd love to connect with you.
Okay. And Natalie, I see you put your email in the chat. Is there any other platforms that they could reach you?
LinkedIn, Northwestern website. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, this has been fantastic. And I just want to thank you all for joining us. Great panelists, amazing insights. And thank you, attendees, for joining us. And it's time for a little break time. You can go back to the main lobby discussion. And then, yeah, join us here in just short of 30 minutes for our next set of breakouts. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for moderating, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. This was great.
Thank you, Karen and Joey. You guys are amazing.
Thank you.
Oh, you too. This is a great conversation.
Yeah.
Karen, that story doesn't surprise me in any stretch of imagination, but dear God, the things that come out of people's mouths, my favorite personal, like that was not of the most negative, because there's been plenty of things, but I had a coworker who, older gentleman, and we were arguing about how to spend my marketing dollars. And he leaned over, put his hand on my knee, and he said, "Little lady, this is just how business gets done." And I was like, let me show you how business gets done.
How long did he last after that?
Not very long. And the funny thing is, he's still in the industry, not at that company. And I've seen him from time to time, and I hold grudges. So there are people that I do not speak to. I will see you from across the room and I will beeline the exact other way. I will not be polite and cordial to people that have insulted me to high heaven.
Mhm.
So at the dinner, if we have a minute, so I asked Mike if he had any euros. He had 50 euros. He gave it to me. I Venmo'd him for it. And then I slipped it to the waitress to bring us back the wine list, and then had her point out all the most expensive bottles of wine, which we just started to order and not even like necessarily drink. And then when the dinner was over, like we didn't say thank you or anything, me and Mike and, you know, and a few, and his wife me and Mike's wife each grabbed a bottle of wine under our coats. I had a full bottle of the most expensive champagne in the restaurant. And we went back to the hotel and we had champagne and we toasted the bad manufacturer. It was pretty fantastic. The waitress was awesome. She got really into it.
She was amazing.
She would she'd be like, we'd be like, oh, bottle, blah, blah. She'd be like, dos? We'd be like, no, just one. She's like, dos.
But then
like, okay.
That manufacturer, do you send any business their direction? I mean, what if they're really good at what they do, but their reps are shit?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not actually, I have bought their equipment in the past. We're not currently buying their equipment, not because of this. But, if I were a regular, two things, Natalie. One, this only happened a couple of weeks ago, and I've actually been sitting on this story and some other stories. And I've actually written a draft of an essay sort of about my experiences over the years that kind of culminates in this story. And then also talks about this toxic male environment that we were talking about and what I think we can do about it. So I have a draft of an essay that I'm trying to figure out what to do with. But I think that we do need to start calling manufacturers and vendors and our coworkers and our colleagues from other universities that we run into out. I think we need to start, I think Joey's right. We need to, if we feel we have the voice to do it, but I think the problem is that puts all of the responsibility on us, right? It's all on us. So what about our allies, as Joey said, where are our allies?
I had an incident at ISE back in May, and shortly thereafter, getting ready for the June conference, and not directed at me, but was the constant of make sure you're in a group, make sure someone knows where you are. And I was like, I was in a group. Everyone knew where I was.
Yeah. I know what you're saying. I've had those too, Joey. And that's actually the culmination of my essay talks about that and about what do we do about this? And how do we make sure everybody gets home safe, Right.
So there's that piece that, God, there's so many components and parts to this. And there is, what can Avixa do? And I know that I sit on, very much on that side of the fence of what can Avixa do. But there is also, what can the corporations do? What can the leaders do? And when there are no repercussions for the actions, when the response is, we did some sensitivity training, he was just having a hard time, that is not acceptable. And I know, Mike, you're one of the first people I know who talked about, I will not sit on a panel that, looks like me. I will not do these things.
Yeah.
How do we get people to really take part in that? I mean, even looking at the, I've got a little bit of a finger in the pot of what happens with Infocom and the speakers and working with our conference directors there, and just watching how that works. And it really is a challenge, and it has to move beyond the loud women in our industry. I am proud of who I am. I've been called aggressive, brash, passionate. There was a question in there about being passionate, and it's kind of a standard thing for me on an interview. I will tell you, I'm incredibly passionate. You will know when I am unhappy. You will know when I'm excited. I wear it everywhere. But the thing is, you're also going to know that I'm passionate about what I'm working on. And that is the biggest asset that I could bring to anything that I do. And it's even the pre-conversation that we were on, I jumped in the middle of this tuna conversation, early on, and was able to bring it back to, goodness, tuna belongs on a bris table. It belongs on a breakfast table. Being able to have those conversations and recognition that we don't believe the same way, we don't look the same. Because you're right, it's not simply about women. It's so much broader than that. It is so much deeper when we look at how did any of our companies handle the murder of George Floyd, and how that affected our companies, and how many of us felt comfortable looking at our fellow Black coworkers and saying, "Are you okay?" These are how do we create these environments? How do we create this inclusion? And it's not just, we see a lot of the same people as we speak on these panels.
Yeah.
How does it get better? How do we get above and beyond that? And that's where, on a personal level, I struggle. I know the company I work for, and I'm proud of the company I work for. But we don't see that unilaterally.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you would like to publish your article, or if you would like to get on video with it, I can help you with that.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I really do. Yeah. Maybe I'll send you a draft, Joey, and you
Okay.
can take a look. Yeah.
I would love that.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. Well, this has been great. I'm going to end this, sadly for everyone, but I'm going to go ahead and end this session. And hopefully we'll see some of you later yet in the day for the HETMA thing. So thank you all. I really appreciate it.
Thanks all. Take care.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.